All right. So in the second chapter, we have seen how to do certain calculations, right? How to get expectation value, how to get eigenvalue, how to get eigenvector, how to get the norm of a vector, right? All of these calculations we have already seen. Can you guys hear me? Please let me know if you can hear me. Otherwise,
Yes,
I'll
ma'am.
keep on talking. And you
Yes,
can
ma'am.
see the screen. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. All right. So, okay, so in the second chapter, we learned about all those calculations, but we didn't really see so much about what it physically means, right? I told you that that the second chapter was only mathematics, and once you learn the mathematics, the following chapters you will understand properly, like what it means physically. So this is the point where we will start to learn the physical aspects of quantum mechanics. Okay, what we mean by it and why we need to do those calculations. Okay, so here in this chapter, we are going to learn about postulates of quantum mechanics. Okay, and what is postulate? Postulate is basically, it's a statement that has a basis on some fact. Okay, so all of quantum mechanics is based on some certain number of postulates, and these postulates are statements that have some basis. And what is the basis of this postulate? The basis is basically experimental result or experimental observation. Okay, so these postulates are not really derived, but they come from experimental observations. But the point is that the theory that is built on top of this postulate, okay, that gives the correct match with the experimental result. And that is why we say that the postulates hold, that all quantum mechanics are based on these postulates, even though it has not been derived. But because all the theory and calculation that is built on top of these postulates give you the correct match with the experimental result. And so we say that, okay, these postulates are actually true and all of quantum mechanics are based on these postulates. Okay, so that's what I've said. Postulates cannot be derived. One can build a theory on top of it. If the theory holds for experimental observations, then the postulates are valid. All right. So now let's see. Okay, first of all, let's see what is the background of these postulates. So in classical mechanics, any state of a system, right, is given by two variables. If you know the position and the momentum. So if you know R and P, that is position and momentum at a particular time t, then you know everything about the particle, right? Because if you know that, then you can know what the velocity is, you know what the angular momentum is, you know what the energy is, right? Energy is just kinetic energy plus potential energy. Kinetic energy comes from momentum and potential energy comes from the position. So you know all of these quantities just by the fact that you know momentum and position. And if you want to know the evolution, like how the position changes with time or how the momentum changes with time, then in classical mechanics, all you have to do is you have to write down the Hamilton's equations. Okay, so this is your Hamilton's equations. dx by dt is equal to dou h by dou p, and dp by dt is minus dou h by dou x. Here h is your Hamiltonian. Okay, Hamiltonian is nothing but your kinetic energy plus your potential energy. Okay, so h is the Hamiltonian. Right, so here I have given you an example. So any physical quantity can be computed in terms of these two functions, that is position and momentum. Okay, so here you have angular momentum, which is r cross p, energy, which is kinetic energy, plus potential energy. So these are just some examples. Now, what happens in quantum mechanics? In quantum mechanics, one of the things that you have already learned is that there is uncertainty in position and momentum, right? So, because of the uncertainty, what happens is you can never know for sure what the position is, but you can know what is the probability of finding a particle in that particular position, right? That is something that you can say, but you cannot know what is the position, right? So that is the difference between classical mechanics and quantum mechanics. So let's see what is it in quantum mechanics. In quantum mechanics, the same concepts, right? The same like the when you say state of a system, right? The same concepts are specified by postulates. And these postulates enable us to understand the following questions. Okay, what are the questions? How a quantum state is described mathematically at a given time. Like in classical mechanics, you describe the state of a system by position and momentum at a particular time. But in quantum mechanics, how do you do that? How do you describe the state of a system at a given time? Second, how to calculate the various physical quantities from this quantum state. And third, knowing the system state at a time t, how to find what is the state of the system at some later time t dash. Okay, so these are the questions. So these questions are answered by the postulates of quantum mechanics. So we will try to see what the postulates are now. Okay, the answers to the above questions are given by quantum mechanics postulates. So let's come to first postulate. Postulate 1 is state of a system. So it talks about the state of the system. Like in classical mechanics, the state of the system is nothing but your position vector and your momentum vector. That defines your state of a system. In quantum mechanics though, what is the state of a system? Okay, so let's see. The state of any physical system is specified at each time t by a state vector psi of t, and this psi of t is in a Hilbert space. Okay, so Hilbert space has certain properties which we have seen in chapter 2, meaning that the operators will add linearly, and if you do a product, then your product of a scalar and a vector will give you a vector, and such so on and so forth. These are the properties of Hilbert space, right? So the state of any physical system is specified at each time t by a state vector psi of t in a Hilbert space H. And this state vector psi of t, right, this contains all the about the system. Okay. So if you know psi of t, right, if you know the state vector, you basically know everything that you need to know about the system. Then any operator that you act on psi of t will give you the observation. Okay, so that satisfies. Then if you want to find the probability, that also probability of finding a particle in a particular state, that also you can find by taking the norm of psi of t, right? So basically it is saying that if you know psi of t, the state vector psi of t at a particular time t, then you know everything that is there to know about this system. Okay, so this is a powerful statement. Then second postulate, what do you do with the state? Okay, you have some state, but you want to make some measurement, right? That is what you generally do. So what does it mean to make measurements? So postulate 2, observables, is about observables and operators. Okay, so to every physically measurable quantity A called an observable or dynamical variable, there corresponds a linear Hermitian operator A hat whose eigenvectors form a complete basis. So let's break down the statement. So for every physically measurable quantity, okay, any physically measurable quantity is called an observable. For example, energy is an observable, angular momentum is an observable. Okay, so these are physically measurable quantities. So these are observables. Okay, so for any physically measurable quantity, which is called an observable, for that observable there will be an operator. Okay, because only if you act an operator on a eigenstate, right, on a state vector, you are going to get the observable. Okay, so for every observable there corresponds an operator. Okay, that's what it means. And the operator has to be Hermitian. In quantum mechanics, the operators are Hermitian. Why? Because if the operators are not Hermitian, then the observable that you will get will not be real. Okay, because Hermitian operators always give you real numbers. Okay, real eigenvalues. Hermitian of this you should always remember. I think we have already seen this in chapter 2. So Hermitian operators always give you real eigenvalues. And if you want to physically measure something, it means that it exists in real. It is not a complex number. It is giving you some real number. So in order to get that real number, your operator has to be Hermitian. Okay. And of course, another property of Hermitian operator is that the eigenvectors of the Hermitian operator forms a complete basis. So now you know what a complete basis is, right? So let's see, right? What are the operators? So if your physically measurable quantity, observable, is E, energy E, then your operator has to be the Hamiltonian operator. If your physically measurable quantity is Px, right, momentum in the x direction, then your operator is the P hat operator. For x, it is the x operator. For Lx, angular momentum, it is the Lx hat operator, right? This is the operator. So for every physically measurable quantity, there exists a corresponding operator. Okay. I hope you understand this. Right. So here I've already said the operators are Hermitian, which means the eigenvalues are going to be real and eigenvectors are orthogonal, plus they form a complete basis. Okay. So I hope by now you know what a complete basis is. Okay. Basically, if you okay, let me try this. Right. So what I mean is, I hope this works. So I'm going to try this for the first time. Okay. So essentially, I'm saying that some operator A acting on psi is going to give you some observable A, right, which is on psi. And this one is going to be your eigen value, right? This is obviously your state vector or eigenvector. Okay. And for this operator, if there are different eigenvectors, then they will form a complete basis, which means your J, psi J is going to give you I, right? So this is your complete basis. Okay. So this is what I mean by Hermitian operator and with the real eigenvalue. Alright, so let's go on. Okay, so eigenvalues are real, which means they are basically the physically measurable quantities. Okay, the third postulate. Third postulate is for measurements and eigenvalues of operators. So how do you carry out the measurement? Or if you carry out a measurement, what is the measurement that you will get? Right? What is the value that you get for that measurement? Okay, so the third postulate is about measurements. So the measurement of an observable A may be represented formally by the action of A on a state vector psi. Okay, so this now, so A hat is the operator. So if you act A hat on the state vector psi, you are going to get some measurement. Okay, the result of such a measurement is one of the eigenvalues An, which are real. Okay, so obviously if you add, because this is in quantum mechanics, the operator should be Hermitian. So because this is a Hermitian operator acting on a state vector, what you will get? You will get a eigenvalue. And because the operator was Hermitian, the eigenvalue is going to be real. Okay, so the eigenvalue is An of the operator A. If the result of a measurement of A on a state psi is An, the state of a system immediately after the measurements changes to psi n. So what it is saying is, so suppose there is a state, okay? Now you carry out the measurement. How you carry out the measurement? You act the operator A on the state vector psi. Because you're acting the vector A on the state vector psi, so the operator might be some matrix. Imagine that the operator is a 2 cross 2 matrix. So if the operator is a 2 cross 2 matrix, how many eigenvalues it will have? Eigenvalues and eigenvector, it will have 2 eigenvalues and 2 eigenvectors. Okay, but when you carry out the measurement, what happens is your state goes to a, you will only get one of the eigenvalues as your measurement. Okay, you are not going to get two eigenvalues because you will only get one of the eigenvalues. So if you get one eigenvalue, let's say an, you had to, there are possibility of two eigenvalues, but when you carry out the measurement, you will always get only one of the eigenvalues. So let's say that eigenvalue was an, then the eigenvector or the state that the new state of the system becomes the corresponding eigenstate. That is what this statement is saying. Okay, so this statement is saying that initially, let's say the system is unperturbed, nothing is happening. Now you act an operator on the system, okay, on the state side. So what you will get, even though the operator has many eigenvalues, ultimately you are, when you measure, you are going to get only one eigenvalue. Okay, so you got some eigenvalue. The system changes to the corresponding eigenstate. So the state of a system immediately after the measurement changes to psi n. Okay, this is what it means. We will also do some problems, then it will be more clear. Okay, so what it is saying is you have a system operator A acting on psi, and this is equal to an psi n. So after measurement, the eigenvalue is an and eigenvector is psi n. Okay. Now what happens to other eigenvalues? Okay, you only got one eigenvalue, but the operator maybe it's a 2 by 2 matrix, so it means that there should be two eigenvalues. So what happened to the other eigenvalue? So the question here is, sorry, not the question, but the point here is that quantum mechanics deals in terms of probabilities. Okay, so what happened is there was a probability to get a particular eigenvalue, and so when you, it's like rolling a dice, there is a probability of getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But when you roll the dice, you only get one of the numbers, right? So it is similar here. So when you carry out the measurement, you get only one of the eigenvalues, but there is a probability of getting the other eigenvalues as well. Okay, so we have to find out what is the probability of getting the individual eigenvalues. So how to do that? So first of all, you know that an is nothing but the scalar product of psi n with psi itself. This we have already seen in the previous chapter. Okay. So this brings us to postulate 4. Okay, what is the probability? What happened to the other eigenvalues? How do we know that which eigenvalue is more favorable? Okay, you will get one of the eigenvalues, but it will come with a certain probability. So you should know which eigenvalue is more favorable and which one is less favorable. That is, what is the probability of getting the individual eigenvalues? So that brings us to postulate 4, which is probabilistic outcome of measurement. Okay. So obviously there is going to be probabilistic outcome of measurement because of uncertainty principle, right? You cannot really get the correct position, right? The correct state of the system. So what you can get is the probability that the wave function is in a certain state. Okay. All right. So that is, by theory, this is what you get. But when you perform the experiment, you will actually get one of the states. Okay. That is what you should remember. All right. So if you perform the experiment multiple times, just like if you roll a dice multiple times, then you will finally see that you get only one by sixth time. You get 2 also 1 by sixth time, 3 also 1 by sixth time, right? So similarly, if you carry out the experiments multiple times, then you will see a probability distribution. But if you carry out the experiment one time, you are going to see only one particular measurement, which means the system, you will see the state of the system in one of the eigenstates and the measurement will be one of the eigenvalues. Okay. So postulate 4 talks about what is the probabilistic outcome of measurements. So we will look at it in terms of two different distinct scenarios. One is the discrete spectra and one will be the continuous spectra. So in the discrete spectra, okay, when measuring an observable A of a system in state psi, the probability of obtaining one of the non-degenerate eigenvalues an of the corresponding operator A is given by. Okay, so basically what it is saying, you're measuring an observable, right? You're carrying out a measurement of an observable A. So how will you do that? You will basically act the operator A onto the state vector psi. So once you add the operator onto the state vector psi, you are supposed to get one of the eigenvalues. Now the question is, what is the probability of getting that eigenvalue? Okay, without doing the measurement, you should have some idea as to what is the probability of getting that eigenvalue. So this talks about probability. So the probability of getting the eigenvalue an is given by the norm of the scalar product of psi n with psi, right? Divided by the scalar product of psi. Okay, so this term is nothing but your an whole square. So this is your an whole square and this is your norm of psi. Okay, so this tells you this scalar product of psi or norm of psi. This tells you what? This tells you what is the total probability. Okay, or right. So if it is normalized, if the state vector is normalized, you should get 1. If it is not normalized, you should get some values here. Right? So that is what it means. So the probability of getting the eigenvalue an after the measurement is given by this term. Okay? And here psi n, right? This psi n is basically the eigenstate of the operator with the eigenvalue an. So psi n is the eigenstate corresponding to the eigenvalue an. Okay, all right. Now, so this is the case when the eigenvalues are non-degenerate. Non-degenerate means all the eigenvalues of the operator are different. So if the operator is 2 by 2 matrix, then you will get 2 eigenvalues, and non-degenerate means those 2 eigenvalues are different from each other. Okay. All right. But if the eigenvalues an is m degenerate, meaning m of those n eigenvalues are degenerate. So let's say you have a 3 cross 3 matrix as the operator, then you will have 3 eigenvalues, obviously. Now, out of those 3 eigenvalues, if 2 of them are degenerate, meaning if 2 of them are the same and one is different, then you say that the eigenvalue is 2 degenerate. Here in this case, they are taking a general scenario. So they are saying if the eigenvalue an is m degenerate, meaning there are m eigenvalues which are the same. Out of these n eigenvalues, m are the same. So then the probability of getting an, right, as the eigenvalue is nothing but, right, summation over 1 to m for this this scalar product, right, the norm of psi n j with psi, right, whole square, divided by the norm of psi itself. Okay, so basically it is the same formula as this one, just that now because it is m degenerate, you are doing a summation from j equal to 1 to m. Okay, so this is your probability. So the act of measurement changes the state. Of course, this we have already seen. So once you do a measurement, the eigenvalue that you get, right, the observable that you get, that is the eigenvalue, is going to be an, and the state of the system becomes psi n. So basically, the state of the system becomes the corresponding eigenstate, which is psi n. Okay, all right. So these we will actually in tomorrow's class, what we'll do is we will do some problems, and then this entire concept will be more clear. Like, what do you mean by probability? Okay, so the probability of getting a certain eigenvalue, what does it mean? Okay, so when we do a problem, you will see it. Now, if the system is already in eigenstate psi n of A, okay, so suppose the system is already in one of the eigenstates, then carrying out the measurement, okay, then if you carry out the measurement, how do you carry out the measurement? You act an operator A onto the state of the system. In this case, the state of the system is already in eigenstate psi n. So if you carry out this measurement, then you will, with certainty, you will get the eigenvalue an, which means then there is no question of, if the system is already in this eigenstate psi n, you will always get the value, the measurement that you will get, it will always be the eigenvalue an. But if the system is not already in one of the eigenstates, then you have to see what is the probability of getting the particular eigenvalue. Okay, so that is the difference here. All right. Any questions up to this point? Okay, let me know if you have any questions.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
actually, like you were talking about the probability of this. So if we are not getting that state back after doing that operator, I mean after solving by that operator,
Yeah.
then the postulates are not I mean following, right? So like you talk about the last postulate one, the fourth one,
Mm-hmm.
where that is not following. So why then we need to go into the like probability kind of thing? Because at least like in case of like operators, either
Mm-hmm.
the operator give the result or not. That doesn't mean that we have to calculate with by probability.
No, so that's what. So the operator is going to give you, so if operator acts on some state, okay, it will give you, if the operator is 2 cross 2, then it will give you two eigenvalues, right? But in experiments, when you actually do the measurement, suppose you are carrying out a measurement and you want to find out the energy of this particle. Let's say some electron is moving and you want to find its energy. Okay. Now, when you find its energy, you will see that the energy is something which corresponds to one of the eigenvalues of the operator. It is not like a sum of the eigenvalues or anything. It corresponds to one of the eigenvalues of the operator, which means that the electron went into one of the states. Okay, so you need to know what, and but now if you, now let's say you let the system come back to equilibrium for some time, and now again you carry out the same measurement of energy, you will see that now second time when you carry out the measurement, the electron is now having an energy which corresponds to a different eigenvalue. Okay, so it means it's like throwing a dice. So every time you throw a dice, you're going to get a different number, right? So you need to know what is the probability of getting that number. So that is what this postulate is talking about. So it is talking about what is the probability of getting that particular eigenvalue. Understand?
So it means like we have to go into the probability thing first, and then we can go for the postulate one. Like after finding the certain amount of probability
Yes.
value, then we can talk.
So the postulate talks about probability, and in experiments, it has been observed that the theory, right? Depending on this formula, you will get some probability, and if you match it with experiment, it actually matches. Like if you compare this result with the experiment, suppose you perform the experiment 100 times, and you want to measure energy, then you will see that that particular eigenvalue for the energy is actually, you will get that eigenvalue only corresponding to this probability. So suppose the probability of getting a particular energy E1 is 1 by 10. Okay, then by theory also you're getting 1 by 10, and when you perform the experiment also, let's say you perform experiment 100 times, then only 10 out of those 100 times you will get that energy. That's what it means, approximately 10 out of 100 times, right? So basically the postulate matched with the experiment very well, and that is why the postulate holds.
Oh,
Okay.
okay, I get it.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So so this was about discrete spectra. In discrete, obviously, operator is going to be like a matrix, state vector is going to be like a vector, right? Like a column vector, right? Your cat is going to be like a column vector. Okay. Now let's talk about continuous spectra. In continuous spectra also same thing is extended to continuous spectra as well. Same type of probability relation. So what it means, you will say probability density that a measurement yields a value between A and A plus dA on a system which is initially in a state psi, it is given by dP of A by dA, okay? And this is given by it is essentially the same formula, psi of A, norm of psi of A whole square by norm of psi. So norm of psi, if psi is normalized, then you are going to get 1. If it is not normalized, you will get some answer here. You will get some value here after doing this integration. And here you are going to get the norm of psi of A. So what is norm of psi of A? This is the square of the norm, right? So this is nothing but psi star of A into psi of A, right? So psi star of A into psi of A by this integration. Okay, this is going to give you your probability density. So the probability density for finding a particle between x and x plus dx is basically this. In the continuous regime, you are going to have a continuous variable. So one of the examples of a continuous variable is the x variable, the position variable. So for the position variable, the probability density is given by this formula. Okay. So this is exactly similar to what we saw in the discrete case. All right. So is this clear? All right. Now let's move to postulate 5. So far we have only talked about the state of the system. We have not talked about how the state of the system will change with time. So this postulate number 5, it talks about the time evolution of a state, of a system or of a state. Okay. So the system is changing with time. So how does it change with time? Okay. So this time evolution of the state vector psi of a system is governed by the time dependent Schrodinger's equation. Okay, and what is the time dependent Schrodinger equation? It is this. Okay, so I h cross dou psi by dou t is equal to h hat into psi of t. Okay, so what is h hat? This you know, right, already. So what is the formula for h hat? I hope you remember. So this is something I asked in class, right? And you guys have forgotten. So this is something that I asked in your quiz, right? So h hat is nothing but minus h. Sorry. So let's see. I'm so bad at writing this. I'm still getting used to it. Minus h cross square by 2m dou square by dou x square plus v of x. Okay. So this is your h hat. Okay. So here you have, this is your kinetic energy and this is your potential energy. Okay. So this is the question that I had asked in quiz. I guess you remember which question this is, right? I had only given you the potential and I had told you find out the energy. Okay, and I had taught you about the Schrodinger equation there. So all you had to do was you had to apply this equation onto the state psi, right? So if you apply h psi, you will get E psi. So if you had done this, you would have got the value of energy. Okay, I guess now you can realize what is this energy that I was asking about. So this, you will get the total energy if you just apply this equation. And I think we have also done similar problems in the assignment. Okay, so this is what it means. So where is my notes? All right. So here it is, but here it is the time dependent Schrodinger equation. Okay, this one is the time independent. This one is the time independent Schrodinger equation. But the other one, this one is the time dependent Schrodinger equation. Okay, so in time dependent Schrodinger equation, obviously it is a differential equation with respect to time as well, because it will, if you solve this equation, you will know, or you will get to know what is the state of the system at a particular time, right? You can calculate the state of the system at any given time. Okay. So H is obviously the Hamiltonian operator corresponding to the total energy of the system. Okay. So this I've already told you. So the note here is that postulates fall into one of two categories. The first four postulates define the system at a particular time, and the fifth postulate shows how the state evolves with time. Like if you know the state of the system at current time, then you can know what is the state of the system at some later time t dash. Okay, that is what the fifth postulate tells you. All right. Okay, now let's go to the state of a system. Okay, now to describe a state in quantum mechanics, we use a mathematical entity. This we have already seen. We use a wave function, right? The wave function is a complex function. In general, it is a complex function. Okay, so to describe a state in quantum mechanics, we use a mathematical entity, which is a complex function in Hilbert space, which is the state vector psi of t. This is the ket psi of t. And this ket psi of t, now from the first postulate, we know that this ket psi of t, this contains all the information that we need about the system. Okay. So if you want to write the wave function in the position space, then you just write it in this format, psi of r comma t. If you want to write it in momentum space, then you write it as psi of p comma t. Okay. So this is your, like the two spaces. The two spaces are complementary to each other. This we have also seen when we looked at Gaussian wave packets and stuff, right? So r and p are complementary variables. And so if you know psi of r comma t, you can also know what is psi of p comma t. Okay, you can write the equation at least. Okay. So therefore, to describe the state of a one-dimensional particle in quantum mechanics, we use a complex function psi of x comma t instead of two real numbers x comma p as in classical mechanics. So what is this statement saying? So in classical mechanics, to know the state of a system, you need to know the position and the momentum of that particle at a particular time. So you need to know x as well as p. But in quantum mechanics, what you need to know the wave function. So if you know the wave function in quantum mechanics, then you know the state of the system. So that is what it means. Okay. So the next question is, what are the mathematical requirements, okay, that a wave function must satisfy for it to correspond to a physical system? Okay, so wave function corresponds to a physical system. Okay, physical system can be any quantum particle, right? Electron, proton, neutron, positron, all of these are quantum particles. So the wave function must correspond to one of these quantum particles, which means that we need to know what is the mathematical requirement that a wave function must satisfy so that this wave function actually defines some quantum particle. Okay, like in classical mechanics, x and p, position and momentum, defines that classical particle, like a ball or something. But in quantum mechanics, we need to know the wave function that defines that quantum particle. But it cannot be just any function. It has, though, that wave function needs to satisfy a certain criteria. So what is that criteria? The criteria is that the wave function psi of x must be continuous, finite, and single valued everywhere. Okay. So it should be continuous. Okay. So obviously any function that is continuous means it has to be, you should be able to differentiate that function at that particular point. Okay. If you are able to differentiate a function at every x, then you say that the function is continuous. It is finite, meaning that, let's say psi of x takes some value at x equal to infinity. If psi of x takes infinite as a value, okay, then it becomes that the wave function is diverging. Then you do not say that it is finite. Okay, it has to be finite. It has to be some value which is like a proper value, not infinity or something. Okay, and then it has to be single valued everywhere. All right, so what do you mean by single valued? Single valued means, for example, let's say you have, a square function, okay, and this is your x-axis, and this is your y-axis. So if this is your square function, then at this value of x, you have this y of x, right? This is y of x. Y of x is taking two values, 1 and 2. Okay, so this is not correct. This function cannot be a wave function. Okay, because here it is taking two values. So y of x is also 0 and y of x is some value 1 or something. Okay, so y of x has two values for one value of x. So this function is not single valued. Okay, so that is the problem here. So you need to only those functions which are single valued, which are continuous and which are finite, those functions are valid wave functions. Okay, so that is your criteria for satisfying a wave function. Now let's see what is the probability density. Okay, this you have already seen. Again, this is just a repeat of what we have already learned. So the physical meaning of wave function, right? If you just write the wave function psi of x, okay, just psi of x has no physical meaning. Okay, there is nothing like, there is no measurable quantity or nothing that we can do with psi of x. What is the physically relevant quantity here? The physically relevant quantity is the square of the norm of psi of x. Okay, so the square of the norm of the wave function, this has a physical meaning, and the physical meaning for this you already know. It comes from the Born's probabilistic interpretation, which means that this is nothing but your probability density. Okay, so this represents your probability density of finding the particle, of finding the wave function in a particular state. Okay, so this represents your probability. So this is your probability density. Okay, which means probability actually is if you multiply the probability density with a volume element, which is dq bar, then you get your probability. Okay, that's it. So this represents probability of finding a particle between r and r plus dr. Okay, because this is your dr is your volume element. So here it is probability of finding a particle between r and r plus. Okay, so the total probability of finding the particle somewhere in the space has to be equal to 1. Okay, if it is not equal to 1, then it means the thing is your state vector is not normalized. All right, so the total probability of finding the particle, because the particle is going to be somewhere in space, so the total probability has to be 1. So this integration has to be equal to 1, right? So a wave function for which this is equal to 1, you say that it is normalized. This we have already seen. Okay. So from this, you can actually calculate or you can actually determine what is the dimension of this quantity, just the square of the wave function. What is the dimension of this square of the wave function quantity? So because this is equal to 1, then square of the wave function has the dimension 1 by L cube, because this dq bar will go to the other side. Okay, so it will have the dimension of 1 by L cube. And so this, just the wave function is going to have the dimension of 1 by root of L cube. Okay, so this is just a kind of intuition as to what you're going to get. However, psi of r itself has no physical meaning, only psi square. This term has a physical meaning, and the physical meaning is in terms of probability. So probability of finding the particle between r and r plus dr, that is given by this function. So here one of the problems I have just listed. So given f of x is equal to 3 sine of pi x, we have to find whether this is a physical or unphysical wave function. Is this wave function valid? So all you have to check for is whether this function is continuous. So it has to be continuous on the entire x-axis. Okay. So yes, this function is definitely continuous. You can differentiate this function and you will still get a proper difference, like you are able to differentiate it. Then it is finite as well. Okay, because the f of x is going to be an oscillating function, right? Because this is a sine function. So sine function is always going to be an oscillating. So there is always going to be a maxima and minima to the sine function. Even no matter what the value of x might be, you are only going to get the value of f of x in between those maxima and minima. It will never cross that maxima or minima because this is a sine function. So it is also a finite function. And yeah, so it is finite and it is square integrable, or it is, um, yeah, it is, what was the other, it is single valued everywhere, right? So for for one value of x, you are only getting one value of f of x, right? So that is also satisfied. Okay, so this is a physical wave function. All right, so I'll stop here today, and tomorrow again we'll do one problem which will kind of, we will see, given a state function, right? Especially for postulate number 4, we will see how, given a state function, we can find out the probability of finding the observable in any one of the eigenvalues. We will see how to find that probability and then what it means. Okay, so that tomorrow we will do such a problem, and then it will be more clear for all of you. Any questions up to this point? Let me know if you have any questions. Okay, let me know if you have any questions, otherwise we can stop here.